Yes, I think we have a sustainable environment, and that has also to do with how we treat people in different way. If people can feel comfortable with how we meet them and how we approach to them. So I will talk about exclusion, integration, inclusion, and what is the difference in one or another way. And I think that's important today. I don't know if I guess that all of you are not working in the field of education as I am, in the sense that I am, as I've been working with kids from preschool and all the way up, students. But I guess even if you work in other contexts like psychologist, as Dr. Saffer, then you also have to know how you approach to people that have a atypical way of functioning. So I think that's good enough for all anyway. So if you look at the definition of inclusion, what can we say about that? Yeah, it's a process actually. How we value individuals, how we recognize the unique attributed and the qualities of ways of being. It's very important that we see every individual as the unique person they are. So central to good inclusive education is of course the children's right, and the Nation Convention of the Rights are a law in Sweden since last year. Not in all countries yet, but hopefully it will be. So in Sweden, all children in need of special education or special support from preschool and all the way up, also university level, they have the right to receive support provision. And that could be help, for example, for a shorter while about reading and writing, if they have a problem to learn that, or they can be for the whole school time because they have more severe problem in learning, so they need support all the years, or short for some hours in mathematics skills or whatever. It could be many different things, or social skills also, of course. So, but what's more important is that inclusive education is about participate. It's about participation, that the student we have in front of us, if it's a 3-year or 1-year-old child, or if it's 15 years, must feel that they are connected to the group, to the class. They have some sort of connection and they feel that they can participate in a good way. So we must facilitate learning in educational activities, routines, and play in different way. So our education is based upon the belief in equality or equity now. We talk more about equity than equality, human rights, democracy for all learners. And we use an appropriate language with all learners, families, and stakeholders. It's normal to have a different way of learning, of being. It's normal to not have an atypical way of being, because many children today have an atypical way. Even if I never talk about normal development, I always talk about typical development, because normal is in connection to the time that we now live in. So what is normal today, 2021, perhaps is not normal of 10 years from now, or was not normal 10 years back. So typical is a better concept for me in my word. So it's normal to have different way of learning or being. That's another way. Yes, of course, it's normal to be the person you are. So inclusive education, as I said, is about participation, that all learners are engaged in learning activities that are meaningful for them. Take this one then. So definition, if you look at separation, I think still in many countries around the world, we have a lot of separate school system, like boarding school for children with certain sort of disability, like we have schools for children with autism or children with that and that and that in many countries. In Sweden, we don't have, we closed those special institutions 1968. So today you can find in Sweden is some small, we have for deaf children, because they use another language. They use the sign language as the first language. And then we also have special classes in the typical school where all children are. We also can have special classes for children with intellectual disabilities, if the parents choose that. So the parents can choose also another way. So separation, then we have children out from the typical school place. They are far away. Exclusion, Yeah, sometimes that could happen in a typical school where you take out some children from the class and place them in a smaller group. Then we have some sort of exclusion. They cannot participate in their own class. They are not allowed to be uh, together with the other kids. So they have their own group. Integration is perhaps the most common when teachers talk about inclusive education. That's integration. They place a child in a class with their own curriculum, their own material, and perhaps also their own personal assistant sometimes, but they are not included. So what is the difference? Inclusion. Yeah, when you have inclusion education, the teacher plan for all learners in the class in front of them. They include everybody. So we used to say if the teacher plan out from a special support, then you can reach all students, because in a typical classroom, about 20, 25 students, you have about 5 students that are in need of some extra support. So start to plan what they need and plan it for all the others, then everybody will learn. That's the best way to work with inclusive education. So Mittler stated that inclusion implies a radical form of the school in terms of curriculum, assessment, pedagogy, and grouping of pupils. It is based on a value system that welcomes and celebrates the diversity arising from gender, disability, nationality, race, language of origin, social background, level of educational achievement. So learning knows no bounds. Everybody can and everybody will. So we must state that all individuals can learn. We must enable education structures, systems, and learning methodologies that meet the needs of all learners. So respect differences and understand that learning also occurs in the home and community. Is about informal and formal settings and structures. And I think that's when we talk to children that were in grade 4, 5, 6, some students did their examination work, and they asked the kids, all the kids were from different ethnic background and had other language than Swedish. And the students asked them, where did you learn Swedish most? And the children asked, on the break, on the breaks, not in the classroom with the Swedish teacher. And that's really interesting because that's informal settings, and children learns a lot when they play with each other, when they have opportunity to be together in mixed groups, of course. So we have a lot of barriers to handle. Of course, we have a lot of negative attitudes and stereotyping of differences. We know that still they hide children in some countries when they are born with certain disability. They hide them. They are not allowed to be in school. We know that for sure. So we must have also an inflexible curriculum. You know, when all children start in school at the age of, okay, 5, 6, or 7, whatever, they have the same curriculum and they have the same goal to reach at the end of grade 9 or grade 12 or whatever. But if some children have had longer time, they could perhaps reach all the goals if they continue up to the age of 25 in school. And some children that are special gifted children, they could quit at the age of 12 because they already know everything in the school at that time. But we don't have that flexible curriculum. We have the idea that everybody learn in the same way, at the same time, so they must be there at the same time. It's like a prison, you know, for 9 years for many kids. So that's really problematic in every society. And also the communication we use. I used to work a lot with children with a neuropsychiatric disorder like autism spectrum or ADHD. And we communicate. If you don't have the competence that you need, you communicate with them as they have a typical communication skills, but they don't. You need to communicate in another way. You have to learn how to communicate with the people you have in front of you. And that's many teachers have problem with, I promise. So of course, special education must be integrated in ordinary education at all levels. So in Sweden, I was a teacher in special ed before I took my doctorate degree, and we entered the classroom with a classroom teacher or the teacher in different subjects like mathematics or whatever. And we gave support in the classroom to the students we know that need support. Of course, sometimes perhaps they need to be only with me for a while. Okay, then we can do that. But most of the time, we give support in the classroom. And to cooperate is very important. And we need also counseling all the time by teachers in special education that have special skills. For example, if I have two children in my class with autism, I need special counseling with the teacher that know more than I know about the autism spectrum disorder. And at this counseling, we talk about teachers' attitudes and behavior is the most content important, and which help the teachers need to reflect about their work and the attitudes. When we make observation and give support to teacher, we never look at the individual child. We look at the teacher's work and the environment in the classroom. Because even if I know that the child have dyslexia or autism or whatever, I know that, but that's only description. The diagnosis is only a description about something. But Dr. Safra and I, both of us can have dyslexia, for example, but it works in different ways with us. Perhaps I have more severe dyslexia than Dr. Safra, or I have more severe autism than another one. So it's unique to every person, and that the teacher must be aware about. So reports show more that the more we have a different approach in education, the better it will be for the students. It's necessary and effective when we're dealing with the diversity of students, that we have a big variation about material, methods, communication, whatever, a big variation we need to have. So how teachers organize their work, how they speak with the students, with the parents, how they arrange for cooperation in the classroom is a lot about pedagogical message, regardless of whether education aims to fulfill other functional purpose. And today we try to have teachers to think about how the students function instead of think about the disability the students have. So how do the students function in a group work, in a whole full class work, when they work one by one, when they play, when they aren't break, whatever, in the whole day, how do they function? And not stare us blind about the disability. John F. Kennedy said that all of us do not have equal talent, but all of us should have equal opportunity to develop our talent. And that's a good message for many of us. So different countries have different school system, and it's not easy to compare between another. I've been working in Belgium for 40 years, every spring in course about inclusive education. I have had courses in Ankara, Asst University for many years for doctoral students and master students. And I have learned a lot. I've worked with projects around Europe for many years. And I have learned a lot about other system in other countries. I've also been visiting a lot of schools, like in South Africa, whatever. I've been living in the United States. So I have seen so many schools and talked to many teachers. And I know that we have different systems. But sometimes when we sit down and talk together about the students we have that are in need of extra support, then I can see that we are not so different, actually. We have part of similarities, more similar than we think we are. So we must think that every society also have ethical rules, have ethical documents to follow, like school law, curriculum documents that have the value about ethical in every society, ethical values. We must believe that it is so, even if we can know that perhaps it's not always even if you have it written in documents, it's not always that the teacher follow this, that we know for sure. But then we have to work more harder to have the teacher to understand what they must do, of course. So Donnelly, already in 1999, he said that activities in schools also include morality and ethical dimension. Teachers must use their power with responsibility. So it's about how I talk and describe the students in trouble in the way of acting, how I talk about them to the parents, to the colleagues, to others. It's very important what word I use when I talk about them. And if we look about self, Self-esteem, self-confidence. Self-esteem, am I good enough as the person I am? Self-confidence, is the thing I do good enough? Then we know that children that fail early in school with, for example, reading and writing, we know that they have a number of other problems like low self-esteem, low self-confidence. And self is a broad concept that includes a lot of self-esteem, self-image, and self-perception. So how do I perceive myself? How do I look at myself gradually? That develops through experience. If I have succeed or if I have failed in the school, early in the school, already in preschool if I fail, it have a big impact on my self-esteem or my self-perception, but also at my self-efficacy. Today we use Bandura quite much in Sweden. We talk about self-efficacy, that I believe in myself, that I can teach children how to read and write as a teacher, to have good self-efficacy to my to my own profession, and do I have good self-efficacy that I believe that all my students in front of me also can learn. So self-efficacy is a very important concept to work with for your own sake, of course. So inclusive teachers, they must have high expectation for all learners. Teamwork and cooperation with other profession, as I said before, is very important. And also that I develop myself. I also try to find more competence to develop myself, that I have to take responsibility for my own lifelong learning. So every time I have had a new students with some sort of disability that I didn't know anything about, I went to my principal and said, okay, I must go to a course to learn something because I don't know what to do. I have never met a child like this before. But that's my responsibility, that I realize that I can't teach if I don't have the competence and the knowledge how to do with a specific student. So if we look at teacher in higher education university, it's so interesting because, as I said, I have been working at other university around the world sometimes. And when I look at the teacher program in some countries, I almost cry. So how come that they don't have this in the higher university, that they don't treat students in a democratic way at the university level? No, they don't do it all over the world, but they should, of course. So we need to view ourselves as lifelong learners. And we need also to give support to the teacher students, that they also must be lifelong learners. And we must work in an inclusive way already at the university level. So we create activities. And in Sweden, the student at university have real strong law that they have support when they have dyslexia, for example, or many other diagnoses as well. All the books can be audio books for them. They don't have to read them. They have longer time for the examination tasks. And they can also have mentor, like a student friend that take the notes for them, and the students are paid for the university to help them with that. It's not much money, but it's a small amount of money. And me as a teacher, I must also give perhaps a verbal examination instead of written examination. There's a lot of factors that I need to be aware about to help this certain student, for example. And the law is very strong. Discrimination law in Sweden is so strong. So if I don't follow this, the student can report me to the university. And that will not be good for me, of course. So I must be aware about the diversity in a positive way about the students I have. And at university level, for example, in Gothenburg, in some courses, I can have 140 students in front of me at the same time. And then I know that perhaps 10 of them or 5 of them have also the need of extra support. So I need also to give them my PowerPoint before, or I give them some document before what I'm going to talk about. So they have all the legal right also before my lecture. So also my own language, also there is important at the university. I have had colleagues that ask me, hey, Ann-Katrin, do you believe that a student with dyslexia can be a good teacher, for example? And I looked at my colleague and I said to them, hey, do you know that students without dyslexia can be good teachers? Because nobody know about that either. So why do they use a diagnosis to put on that? So also you need to stand up for the student at university level also, to take responsibility for that they have also the legal right to have support, and how the teacher at the university talk about them, the professors or whatever we are. So we also must use variation in teaching material and be a role model for new teachers. And I like this picture here. Welcome back, students, the teacher said. Writing assignment. What I did this summer is the task the boy should do. And if you follow me on Twitter, you had known, he answered the teacher. I think it's really funny that the teacher are a little bit perhaps behind sometimes. Do we have any opportunities? Yeah, of course, we have a lot of opportunities when we work with education. We must learn effective strategies. We prove to be a good support. We have a lot of research we can use. We can read take care about new research. And you know, the school and the preschool in Sweden must be grounded in research. So every teacher must actually take in new research to see what can help, what cannot help. And be engaged and competent teacher. How I approach to the students, what response I take, and how I understand them, and how I relate. We talk about relation with the students today. How do I relate to them? So a good environment, network. How can we build that from the preschool and all the way up? Friends. I have students that have problem to be involved in group work because they are excluded at university level, I'm talking about now. So how do I do then to have these students to be in a group work? Yes, I have to work with it. I have to talk to the group and tell them that they must try to practice how to collaborate no matter what, no matter what. And some do, others say, no, we will not. She can find another group. So that's very different, and how much you can struggle with this. So my own understanding of what prevents and what facilitates is of course important. And all possibilities are there. And here you can see the difference of equality and equity and empowerment. And I think today special education in Sweden is more about equity and empowerment. To empower all the children from young age and all the way up to use their own empower, to have their own rights. And I like these photos, also all the pictures, because it says something. So what is core about this when we talk about the core values linked to competence? We have attitudes and beliefs, that's in my heart. We have knowledge and understanding in my hand, skills and abilities in my hands. So when young learners was asked about what a good teacher is, they said, teachers shall be kind, having a sense of humor. They can explain things well, organize a lot of activities, letting us work in group, give us feedback, but most of all, teachers should make learning fun and interesting. And then you must ask yourselves, today when a lot of children play game on the computer or the iPad with a lot of applications, can teacher be more fun than that? Well, that's really a challenge for teacher, to be more fun than what many children do in their home on the free time. So in what way do we include or exclude people in our societies? Because it's not only education, it's not only school, it's not only university. You know, the time that we are in education, in school or at university level, is the shortest time of our life. The longest time we live outside the education system. We live in the society, in workplaces, or whatever. So how do we include or exclude? So what about people today with the immigrant situation we have in many countries? What about different religion, ethnic background, socioeconomic background, unemployed, immigrants, etc.? In Sweden today, we have a lot of problem with racism. We have a lot of problem with Muslim phobia. We have Jewish population that are The Muslim population hate the Jewish. So when they are in the same group, there is a real problem. We have also 2015, Sweden took most immigrants in all Europe in a short time. So from that time, the government or the community were not prepared to give them work, to find quick, to give them the new language, to practice the new language, to give them good accommodation, whatever, whatever. That's why we have a lot of gang criminalities in the suburban today. There's a lot of shooting. There's a lot of dealing with drugs around. And why? Yeah, if I'm unemployed, my mother, my father are unemployed, we have no money. So what do I do? If I'm a teenager and a boy, I try to support my family by being criminal to have money. And that's not to be surprised about, because if the society doesn't open the door to help, and that's the problem we have in Sweden today. We have about 25% immigrants of our population. We are 11 million people in Sweden. So in many classrooms, teacher can have about 25, 30 different languages to handle around. And among all these languages, you also have perhaps 4, 5, 6 children with that need extra support. So of course it's a problem. We have children coming from culture, they had never hold a pen. The father and mother have never been in school. They can't read, they are illiterate. So how can they help their children when they come to the Swedish school system, where they have to do home lessons, learn to read and write? It's not easy for them. It's not easy for the society to meet all the needs around, but they try to work more with these issues in Sweden. So hopefully it will be better. So what is about humanity in our society today? I don't know if you read about the football player in UK when they missed the last, what you call it, when they put the ball in the match, the last thing they do, the straff in Swedish, I don't know. Okay, but they missed them. They missed the football in the goal.
Penalty.
And I had a lot of, Safar, what did you say?
Penalties, I think.
Oh yeah, the last thing they do, when they have the chance to win the game. So they missed the ball, they missed the goal, and two of them had black skins, and they had so much on the social media. So even Boris Johnson, the prime minister, went out and asked to stop. The National Football Association were really furious about that. So how come we have so much hate in the society today? How come that people are sitting on the social media and can write everything to any one of us with a lot of hate, and also conspiracy theory about it's bad to be vaccinated in the pandemic? How come that people have stopped to think? How come that people have stopped to act in a good way? What's humanity in our society today? Yeah, that's an issue to think about. If we talk about also how we should develop a sustainable way, then we need to talk about these people to be sustainable in a more humanity way. So who will be excluded and who will be included in the societies? And Daniels and Ghane, they also state 1999 that development of democracy by definition includes increasing levels of participation in social and political life. To advocate some form of democratic ideal then means that the goal is to include all people in the development of civil society. While much has been written about inclusion in relation to education, especially in the US or Western Europe, the concept can be constructed to include a broader focus than just disabilities and difficulties in education. And that's why I tried to show you earlier about the society. So dilemma, we have always dilemma about everything. They always two sides of the coin. Inclusion is one thing. Different opinion is another thing. Research is one thing, reality another, and when do they meet? That's really important to think about when we work with education or whatever, or to help people that feel bad in another way, like a psychologist. How do you think that research can meet the need for that person? So this was my last slide, and I thank you so much for listening to this. I think I managed my time, didn't I, Dr. Safar? I think this also is really fine. Albert Einstein, he said, everybody is a genius. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. It's the same with children. if you ask them to do that are far away from their ability. And here you also see about inclusive education. Could you please shovel the ramp? And then the man said, all these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you. And then the man said, but if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in. That's what I mean to work in a special education inclusive way. So if you start to make it broader for all learners, then everybody can learn. But if you go out from the children that need support and build on that, everybody can have the access. So now I stop to